Hey Bat fans, Luke here, ready to Bat chat about another Bat book, and today we're going to take a look at the story Batman City of Crime. Batman City of Crime is a pretty dense book, and it collects issues, if I remember right here, looking at the back, Detective Comics issues 801 to 808, and 800 and 814, and part of a short story from the 800 issue. So it's about 12 issue story within kind of like an intro. And when I remember about this story, believe it or not, it was the covers. The covers in the single issues. It's just something that gets kind of stands out. I remember issue 800. That's a great Jaw cover. I remember this very vividly when it came out. The cover for 800. And then really, it's going to maybe minor spoil this a little bit. Start seeing these covers here. These are things just like going back and it's like, yeah, I remember those. Holy cow. And it's amazing how sometimes you just kind of forget certain things, but there's some other issues. Yeah, I remember this cover. Again, these ones are just like, oh yeah, that was that. So there's one more. This kind of shows you the kind of not really going to be able to avoid the quote-unquote spoiler part in this by showing this one particular cover. I think I really should have grabbed the individual issues on this, but it's all good. Yeah, again, these covers I remembered vividly. And this story, it's written by David Lapham, and I'm hoping I'm saying that name right. And to be perfectly honest, not too familiar with his work outside of pretty much Batman for the most part. While I do know he writes the story, or not the story, the title and image, Stray Bullets, and a lot of people that I kind of communicate with on YouTube and internet case speak kind of highly of that title. So an accomplished writer doing this story. Then we have art by Raymond Box, Nathaniel Massengill, and Jason Wright. Probably butchering the hell out of those names, but it's all good. So this story, it's kind of tough to talk about. And out front, this would be a recommend. Would recommend you kind of if you come across it in some form or fashion. This is the most recent printing of this. This is a deluxe edition, but there's trade paperback covers, trade paperback versions of the story. If I remember, the actual cover for the trade is actually one of the splash pages from within this story. I'm going to see if I can find it real quick. And I'm sure you might have recognized it was actually toward the end. When Batman goes up against the big bad in this, which is like the bodies, and I'll flush out here in a minute. I might be wasting my time here. It's actually Batman standing on top of the roof. You see the bat symbol behind him. If anything else, I'm showcasing the art here, but I'm sure at previous editions of this trade you have seen on the shelves at some point. But again, this is like the newer version. Yep, there it is. You will see something like that, and you'll see a City of Crime up top. So, but yeah, this is the most recent edition, deluxe edition hardcover. You don't get much as far as additional content on this, which is really just like a black and white one page, whatever. Mainly I got it for the hardcover. I prefer my trades in hardcover, but anyway. But yeah, this one's kind of tough to talk about because while I say I recommend it, there's some things you kind of have to kind of keep in perspective and kind of in the back of your mind, because while I recommend it and I enjoyed reading it, it's a seriously flawed story. And not really in the concept in itself, it's just more in the execution of the storytelling itself. And I don't know if I'm going to blame David Lapham on him totally, but it's fun. Recommend it, but go in knowing it's gonna be flawed, and you'll pick it up on it. But not only do I think it was fun read, and even understanding that you're gonna have some drawbacks with it. Man, it's sometimes you get those stories where it's just like, man, it's too real, too real, too much of a gut punch, and it's too gloomy. That's why when you hear a lot of people when you read books, sometimes it's kind of get like, a different title from a different perspective, kind of give you, another type of book to read because you're just reading stories like City of Crime all the time. Man, you can get depressed because this one it's dark and gloomy. The premise of the story, especially if you're a parent, um, it sucks. You never wish that on anybody. Some of the things they kind of talk about, and it's yeah, it's a very dark story. We'll just kind of leave it at that. But the premise of the story, and another thing what I like about this, and I'll just kind of, this one's gonna be, I'm talking very off the cuff on this review because again it's sort of flawed, and I don't want to sit there and bash something that I get, like I mentioned before. I recommend it. It was fun, but it's really flawed. But one of the really good things I like about this story is it's one of the things I like about that's a tough thing I was getting read. One thing Scott Snyder does a lot, really in his Batman run. Well, you could say he maybe even did a little bit in Death Metal, but I mean Dark Knights, yeah, Death Metal, whatever. He uses Gotham City as like a character, and you kind of get the gist of Gotham being a world unto its own, and you'll actually see him throughout the stories he tells in his Batman stories. It really is, Gotham is its own thing. It's almost like it's a living, breathing individual, and you'll kind of hear, not really hear, but you're reading, you'll get some of his narration that it's coming from a perspective looking at Gotham. What does it does? Well, even like when you read the first issue in New 52, I mean, what does Gotham mean to you? Blah, 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 blah. And that's one thing I really did like about his storytelling. And Lapham actually does this too in this story. This really is, while the dark storytelling perspective is used and there's the characters and the plot that kind of goes into it, this is really a Gotham story. This is... it's you see it all the time when you read stories about Gotham. It's a place that I think it's even Snyder, I forget what story he mentioned, it was like it will chew you out and just spit on you, but if you survive you become a better person. It's just what this story does. It just shows you how bad of a place Gotham is. It's really not too much positive in it, but the people who do good can make a difference, and they do. But yeah, this is almost a Gotham story. While in the background, what you're kind of seeing to kind of flesh out into the type of place Gotham is, what's actually happening in the story. And the background behind it is Batman actually starts off with Bruce Wayne encounters this individual who's, again, it's a kind of a tough story to kind of read, but Batman's at this, or Bruce Wayne's at this party, and he only has a really short connection with this individual, and I forget what her name is. Oh goodness, what's her name? And I'll come across it, but she's kind of like this young, I don't want to say escort, but I sort of do. I think it's implied that she is. And Bruce Wayne has like a very short minute interaction, and you just see that like this is like, oh man, she's just going down the wrong path. And what you end up finding later on is that same person in this party actually gets kind of dealt over to this drug dealer, and she kind of overdoses, in the case maybe. But going into the story later, you actually see this one individual. It's a mother, and she's reaching out for help to get her daughter that kind of it's said that she ran away, but you find out there's a twist, and I don't want to ruin it. But she pleads out. She actually goes with the police, and she goes down to me and said, "Help me find my daughter." And again, there's a twist in it. I don't want to spoil it, but not only okay. I will just say, without going too much in the spoilery territory, the person that Bruce Wayne interact with in that party that he found dead, and the daughter of the mother that he runs into that's pleading for help to find her. She ran away and she was pregnant. We'll just say there's a very tight connection between the two, and the mother's motives are not all that they appear. We'll just leave it at that. But we actually find Batman go to this woman and says, "Hey, I promise you I will find your daughter." And it's actually, the story is Batman kind of following the trail, being a detective, and really trying to track down this lost daughter of this mother that's pleading for help. And that's another good thing about this story, is that it's very street level. This is nothing fancy. This is dark, glooming doom, street level storytelling, with some weird elements to which I'll get that in a minute. But really, Batman using his detective skills, tracking things down, going undercover. You see sort of like a Matches Malone-esque type of persona come out in this, as Batman goes into some of the darker elements of the city to try to track down this individual. And it's kind of coming from that approach, which I really do. Those are almost some of my most fun Batman stories. It's just the street level, down to the basics, detective type of stories we get from Batman. Those are almost some of my favorites, and the bombastic ones are fun too and all. But this one uses that approach, and it really is just the evolution of the story of Batman trying to track down this individual. You do see some cameos in here. You see a cameo by Penguin in this, who, for the most part, I think David Lapham does a good job of keeping the Penguin persona in check and somewhat true to character. You do see the ventriloquist in this, which Wesker's here, but as you can kind of tell, he has a bad experience at the sword, to say the least. But you do see Wesker and ventriloquist in this. You do see Mr. Freeze in this, and to be perfectly honest, the persona in this story with Mr. Freeze, to me, felt a little off. He felt a little bit too extreme, for my taste, anyway. And I think that's far as like the cast of characters you would recognize in this. Obviously, Robin's in here. Commissioner Gordon is not commissioner. This is like toward the tail end of like kind of war crimes. If you're kind of doing your timeline, happens in that type of time period of the storytelling. And I think that's really it as far as who you would recognize. But basically, what you find out is there's someone kind of pulling the strings, what's going on, and what's going on with the lost individual. You find out basically is that there's a ring. It's kind of like a human trafficking sting that's going on in Gotham, and they're all pregnant ladies. Human trafficking. It's one of those really dark, just disgusting things to kind of explore that we're capable of people. What we can do. That's the thing. Again, it's just kind of like, imagine if you're a parent, you lost a child, and they're caught up in the human trafficking, they're pregnant, they're lost. It's just, it's rough. But basically, it's kind of like this cult. It's by a group of people called the Bodies, and this is where I think the story goes off the rails a little bit. They come back to life, and they're like dust. They're like sort of like zombies in a way. Clay. It's weird. So, but yeah. So, I mean, it really is a story. Batman trying to track down this lost girl, and again, you kind of get a really sad ending, but really, almost like the really sad part is really what happened to her. Again, kind of goes back to that. Not all is everything that it seems early in the story. So the flaws I kind of mentioned before. Again, some of the ways that some of the characters kind of come off is just kind of weird. But the whole angle of Mr. Freeze, you really don't get no conclusion to it. Same thing with Penguin. He shows up, he does his thing, but it's kind of like that part of the story angle kind of just disappears. There's really no flushing out of the whole point of the story him coming in. Same thing with the ventriloquist, mainly with Wesker. It's just he gets hurt and that's really it. Robin shows up. The Robin's nice, but the way his kind of story comes toward the end, how he gets kind of hung up with Commissioner Gordon as they're kind of barricaded in this hospital as the riots are going around. Again, it doesn't really. A lot of things don't get flushed out, or they don't even get finalized to me. The way the twist at the end happened really quick. That's like toward the end of the story. So a lot of things. It's a 12-issue story. It just seemed like really wrapped up quickly to the end, and there was a lot of loose ends that really don't get flushed out. To be perfectly honest, some things you kind of have to really stretch your logic reasoning a little bit here and there. But one thing I didn't mention, the artist is really good, but it's a really dark color palette too. It's an interesting art style. It's good, not perfect, but it fits the tone really well in this. Again, another cover. I was like, yep, I remember that. But yeah, all in all, yeah, fun, but there's some flaws in this, and I'm just really hitting the high points in all of this. And you'll catch it as you kind of read along. So again, recommended. Kind of expensive a little bit, $40 on the hardcover. Got a discount on it. That's how I kind of swung this. But if you come across it, maybe in trade paperback, absolutely. But just go in. It's a long story. You're getting the journey. It's again ground level storytelling, but does have some flaws. You just got to know that going in. It's like just enjoy it for the journey for what it is, but the flaws and just the storytelling and the subject matter kind of uses just it's rough. So anyway, but do recommend it. Score, I'm giving this like a 2.5, right in the middle out of 5. Average as far as story, a score, but to me, I think the journey was good. But again, knowing some flaws along the way. So anyway, hit me up in the comments below if you read the story. We'll bat chat about this one, and we'll kind of go from there. So until next video, take care.